I was a filmmaker in Philadelphia and making commercials and the early films for Sesame Street, which were amazing fun and great practice at nearly everything. The budgets were skinny, but we were pretty much on our own, and they loved everything we did, so that was nice. And I always loved moving the camera. I loved, for reasons that I didn't understand for years, I loved moving shots. I love what happens when the lens moves through space. And people broke down moving camera shots in what now appear to me, rather primitive ways, kind of silly ways. They would say, you either zoom or you push in, that's a push in, or you dolly to the left or right, that's a traverse, et cetera, or you boom up. Turning camera movement into a mechanistic phenomenon that resembled the moves you get from the gear at the time. But all of those are almost these discrete ideas, as if a stop-motion animator were, animating the world. All right, now it moves up, now it moves right, now it moves left. What was missing, and it took me years to understand this, is the glorious continuity of movement that we have as humans. We not only have an insanely sophisticated visual equipment, we have the ability to ambulate in the most glorious, free, spontaneous way, And we might as well start right there, because let's base this discussion on what I now think is at the heart of it all, which is the way we see as humans, highly evolved over 100 million years of our ancestral critters, whatever they were, right back to the first things with legs, right? What have we got for equipment? We have, what do they call it? Vestibulo-optical reflex. I only learned the name of it after I worked out that it must exist, and did exist. What it is this insanely great. Your inner ear controls your eye muscles, right? And therefore, when you're bounding around and moving, nature abhors the handheld look itself, obviously, because nature equipped you to move your eye muscles counter to what's happening to your head. If you have a close enough choker on me to see what my eyes are doing, they're stuck on Jim Mathers here, Go ahead, Jim, you've done it. I made you do this before. Move your head up and down wildly, but keep looking at me. It's not shaky, right? Yeah. And likewise this, right? And here's the kicker. If you tilt your head this way, yours is already 10 degrees that way. Tilt it way over here. The world does not tilt. Your brain is smart enough to know that the world didn't tilt. But all of those things are what you get handheld. As if as if your eyes had none of this and somebody was hand holding your eyes. And evolution equipped us with the vestibulo-optical reflex so that we wouldn't immediately be eaten by something that was pursuing us. Can you imagine if you were running away from a predator and it looked handheld? You would be eaten immediately, Or if you were chasing your own dinner and it looked like that, your dinner would escape. These are, joke, analogies, but Lord, it's true. So taking all that for granted, the way we see from the time we're ambulatory is like a glorious movie of our own lives. And it's a stable movie. It's not a handheld movie. Level is always level. Horizon is always horizon. We always know what it is. And we may look around anywhere and the world doesn't shake, And in addition to that, we have this wonderful thing called a saccade. A saccade is what you do 1,000 times a day. I read one time that you do it 100,000 times a day. I don't know. But the saccade is when you go like this and look from one thing to the other. And what happens is really interesting. There's a head turn involved, unless it's just a shorty, where you go from side to side like that. But that ability the saccade means that we see things all around to move this focusing portion of our vision. We don't see in focus everywhere, obviously, to move it to where we want to see it, and seamlessly, with no drama at all. And we, if you'll accept the expression, operate our own eyes with incredible precision. When I teach Steadicam operators to do whip pans, boy, it's really hard to go from there to there and land it the way we land our eyes. Bang, bang, bang. So this is what we're used to. We're used to a highly sophisticated, stable view of the universe that forms our own personal movie. So now, 200,000 years after Cro-Magnon humans came along, 700,000 years after Neanderthals came along, and I have no doubt they had the same equipment, suddenly we are able to generate images that aren't reality and that aren't just shadows on a cave wall. We're able to make movies, and then we were able to make color movies, right? But oddly enough, those movies did not exactly resemble our native vision. Those movies were based on whatever trundling hardware people had to move the camera or to simply sit it on a tripod and pan it. I've been recently emancipated from my CEO job on a project, and I'm now just the innovation guy on a project. And so I'd be able to return to a book that I started 20 years ago. And the scene that I chose to open it is on the crane, ready for the third take of Bound for Glory, my first feature. And that film involved me standing on a crane, which nobody ever did. Crane lowers down, guys grab it to hold it. I step off and follow David Carradine through a camp. Shot that had never been done before. But the sort of thing humans did for all those 700,000 years, And it gives me an opportunity to review what it took for this device that I did, now called the Steadicam, to make things look more or less like they look for humanity. And that meant 6 degrees of isolation, angular, pan, tilt, and roll, spatial isolation, in, out, side to side, up, down. Obviously within the range that an operator can do with his hands, And then suddenly you have the ability to move the camera more or less the way humans move. But if you're telling a story, you don't want it to feel like a point of view. So not only do we move with that lovely stability that we're used to, but we move with the ability to place the lens where it's best for the story. In some cases where our eyes would never go, right on the deck, looking up at Danny on his big wheel, or up high and booming down, and, all the things that an objective, omniscient third director's eye view shot, an objective shot, can go anywhere and do anything. The only thing it doesn't want to do is look like a point of view. So if I was to set out in one giant long paragraph what fascinates me now, that's it. I'm just really, really interested, not only in the way we see, but in the way movies should see, to be native to human vision. And this era is the first era in which it's easy to have stabilized human-looking shots. So stable isn't anymore these gigantic Iron Age trundling bits of hardware, like the Chapman crane that I first stepped off. So among these tools we have are something called gimbals, which would have been impossible to imagine when I got in. I stabilize things by Newtonian physics, just slugging my way through it, degree of freedom at a time. What does it take to be free up and down and side to side and in and out? What does it take to be totally isolated and pan, tilt, and roll, Now we have gimbals, and some of them are as small as effectively your iPhone. All these stable things, gimbals in particular, the only thing they don't have is a one-to-one correspondence with what angle you want to be, instantaneous. Meaning, if I pan, the eye comes like this. It gets there late, you know. They have to be that way because you have to have the room in it to shake. And if there's a trend to the left, even though you're shaking, it goes, okay, he wants to go left, and delayed, it follows, you know. So the second thing that I'm passionate about is operating. Operating in the grand sense that you have the audience's eyeballs in your hand. What is the thing they should see? What do you want them to see? You know, and not only what, but the crucial fourth dimension of time. Exactly when do you want to see it? You know, not. You know, and there is where Steadicam is. It really shines in almost every size. It shines because your hand is on the thing. And this is a great way to operate, you know, rather than wheels, which you must be very expert at, or a fluid head, or, God help us, a joystick. You have to be a god to operate really well with a joystick. It's tough, but this is one-to-one. I want to see that, and I want to see you, Jim, you know, and I want it to be here, or here, or here. Great operating, stable operating, doesn't imply slow and sloppy and mushy and like oatmeal. Because we don't operate our eyes that way. It implies I want to see that and this and boom. And then it becomes seamless, you know. And then the story is yours to tell. But at its best, that is a wonderful way to aim the audience's eyeballs. And operating partakes of, as we're now talking moving camera operating, partakes of all the things that make the moving camera really so exciting to me, you know. A moving shot is a fake 3D effect in 2Ds. You're passing through space, you have all the cues that you have if you had binocular vision, you know. You see the shape of things, you see around them in progress. It has an emotional wallop, the way you move, you know. That shot is so different than that shot, you know. This is an exclamation point, you know. This is, you know, what's going on here, you know. It has kinetic joy, a moving shot, just the joy of tearing through space and bounding through space. It has storytelling chops, a moving camera, because we do it all the time. If I want to see something, I get up and walk around. What's behind there, you know? If I don't quite see it, I go like this, you know? Without even thinking about it. And with our audience eyeball on our hands, we have to do that for them, you know? But do it in a way that doesn't feel artificial or mechanical or whatever, and that doesn't feel like a point of view. The Steadicam is an idea-directed tool for directing the audience, you know, directing the audience's attention. And so once you have the machine and you have an athletic and artistic temperament that can do something with it, and enough self-confidence and self-possession to have ideas and let them flow, wow, it comes alive. May I back up for a moment and just say, well, how does the Steadicam work? How does it isolate in all these 6 axes? It's 4 things, combination of 4 things, without any one of which it wouldn't work. The first thing you have to do is get access to the center of gravity of the camera, so you make a structure that puts part of your burden elsewhere, down below, such as a battery or nowadays a monitor, right? That pulls the center of gravity out of the camera where you can get to it. All right, so for angular isolation, at that point we put a gimbal, which is rings within rings. Can you see that? so that no matter what this does, it doesn't affect the angle. That's right around this, let's say, central post of this thing. Now I can't hold it up with my hand because your fine motor skills go out the window if you're under load. So I needed an artificial way to float the weight. That immediately turned into an articulated arm with springs that float the weight. So that's the leg bone is attached to the gimbal bone, is attached to the arm bone, you know. Hear the word of the Lord, because once you do that, you know, and it's stuck to a vest that you're wearing, you have an object that you can run with, and it just flies, you know. And you're guiding it with fingers. And as I said, number 4 is how do you see through the lens? The Steadicam is officially 50 years old, and it's still growing and expanding, and that's amazing to me. I started chasing this with primitive versions that did part of the job that were unpatentable or weighed as much as a Volkswagen, or, you know. And in each case made demo tapes and films. I had an early Akai 1/4-inch recorder that had a separate monitor and a little camera and a little recorder, you know, reel-to-reel 1/4-inch tape, black and white. And I made shots on that had never been seen before with some of these early prototypes. And they got more and more elaborate when I wanted to go from floor to ceiling and remotely pan. They were festooned with Berg belts and, you know, controls and so on. And that was barely good enough for my little Eclair ACL camera, 16 mil. To see through the lens, which is one of the things you must do remotely, I had a fiber optic viewfinder, 6 feet long, you know, that came out of the camera, replaced the ground glass, came up over my head and into an eyepiece. You know, so one eye was covered. It was a little bouncy if I was running. It was very disorienting because if I tilted my head, here's an actor that's now tilted, and you have an ungovernable urge to re-erect the actor to your other eye, which means when you get back to dailies, there's the actor leaning, you know. And the worst of all is if you're shooting somebody behind you, you know, with the camera pointed here, and you're seeing him out here, and he starts to leave this frame, you have to ring the engine room to figure out, wait, engine room, what do I do with my hand? He's leaving, you know. They were so non-ideal and so non-commercial that it was a struggle to keep my interest up, and they were all expensive as hell. And this is money that came out of my little film company, you know. So it was really discouraging. But eventually, as is well known, I went into a motel and I just decided to give myself a week to figure it out. And I thought about nothing else for a week. Made drawings, you know, little models and blah blah blah. Models out of pasta, you know, anything. And came out of there with something that would fly a 35 millimeter camera that was way simpler and that conceivably could be commercial. Still had a fiber optic viewfinder because video assist hadn't landed yet, but that made a demo. I had showed the 16 millimeter one in Hollywood and they all said, wow, blah, 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 but you have to do it in 35 mil, which just destroyed me thinking about it. But it did work in 35 with my old Rommel Arri A, 2A, still with its desert paint under the black wrinkle finish. If it got dinged, you could see Rommel's desert paint under it on my Arri. And we made a demo called 30 Impossible Shots. And every one of them was literally something that couldn't have been done with today's technology. And so therefore that reel went viral. In 35 mil, they made about 20 copies and it went everywhere on Earth. Every player on Earth saw it, including Kubrick and, you know, and that immediately got me a job with John Avildsen, who was contemplating shooting Rocky in Philly. They were prepping it, and the Art Museum steps got his attention, because Ellen, my wife, ran down the steps and back up, you know. Stallone was a wimp, he only went up, you know. She went down and back up. And Kubrick saw it and was prepping The Shining, had the galleys for The Shining. So that was a wonderful period, and I got a licensee. It formerly was Cinema Products Corporation. Finally, in 2000, it became Tiffin. And at that point, we really started rocking with new gear. It was very hard to get CP to do new stuff at some point. And since 2000, in 2004, I did the whole series of arms, the so-called G series, a host of things, often with collaborators. Fast forward 50 years, and boy, the technology now is fantastic. The arms are very similar. The arm, our best arm, just debuted a additional generation of the G arm that I made that flies 70 pounds in his fingertip and so on. A gorgeous arm. The gimbals are pretty much the same. They're state-of-the-art. The batteries are phenomenally lighter than they used to be. Our battery was 5 pounds. Our monitor was 5 pounds. So the minimum weight of a Steadicam sled got up into the 20s, plus camera. So that's a lot of weight, you know. Batteries are now 1.5 pounds, let's say, roughly, and monitors are 1.5 pounds. And inherent in this deal is the fact that level is up to you. That's the dirty laundry of Steadicam, is that you had to formerly keep it level. We helped that deal by making it slightly bottom heavy, so that even if you look away, you can feel a little bit of tendency to hang upright, right? But that had its own garbage that came with it, meaning it's the minute you accelerate or change direction, that big pendulum wants to swing a little, and you had to, you know, subtly stop it from doing that. So, God, choose your poison. Do you want it level? You have to do that. Now, currently, with Steve Wagner, who's an electronics genius, and Jerry Hallway and myself and the engineers at Tiffin, a few years ago we did something called the Volt. What the Volt did was remove the unproductive housekeeping chore of keeping it level. Because as we said initially, if the world isn't level, if your shot isn't level, that's an alarm bell in your brain. Our world is always level. If a shot looks off level, something's wrong, you know. The Volt just, without your even being aware of it, makes you a better operator. The Volt just tweaks the little motors on the gimbal and knows if it's off level and makes it try to stay level. And that's all you need, you know. And it does a number of other things. I won't get into the weeds, but it does some great stuff. So here we have a machine that can be hurled around in the most exciting way you can imagine, that eliminates the sort of floor mopping chore of keeping it level, and that gets you to the pure essence of that audience eyeball aiming, you know? So that, I can't tell you how thrilling that is. I was kind of exhilarated at Tiffin this morning because I saw the new arm. The old one that I did was great, but this one is, you know, smaller, lighter, better, you know, stiffer, blah, 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 blah. Real progress. So compared to my, you know, very challenged self at the beginning, doing films like The Shining with a Model 2 Steadicam and my arm jacked up to the max to fly Stanley's BL camera. Discs flying like frisbees, doing 40 takes of things, you know. This is really good. And I said to the boys today, what I would not have given to have this technology for all the 100 films that I did. Because the reality is, yeah, I did great stuff, but every shot that I ever made would have been better with this gear, you know. And it's just a thrilling way of telling a story, you know. That's what we were after, you know.